Hello and welcome to Das German Critic, weil hey, außer mir macht's ja keiner. And this movie was bad. I mean, this movie was just bad. I mean, holy shit was this movie bad. I mean, this movie was just awfully, awfully bad.
So schlimm?
Where do I begin with this movie? Well, let's start out by saying that Holger Kreimeier of Fernsehkritik TV has already done a quickie of sorts on this film, and I will be repeating some of the points he made, simply because he made them better than I did. Helden, wenn dein Land dich braucht. Heroes When Your Country Needs You was broadcast on October 3rd, 2013 by the German TV channel RTL. Suffice to say, RTL isn't known for good programs, and this movie didn't do the channel any favors, despite having an all-star cast. So, let's sit back and take a look at the awfulness that is Transformers 3. I'll explain later. So we open up the movie with some narration. In space. Because all good disaster movies open with a narration, right? In welche Welt wollen wir unsere Kinder entlassen? Die Wissenschaft kann jetzt im größten Forschungsprojekt aller Zeiten den Urknall simulieren. Wir spielen Gott. Okay, let's ignore the fact that most physicists reject the concept of God and therefore aren't trying to play him. Let's ignore the fact that there are still hundreds, if not thousands of theistic scientists who have every reason to find evidence for their God or gods. And let's ignore the fact that a large number of those scientists see the Big Bang as well as the theory of evolution and everything else in science as being part of God's creation and design. Because those facts simply don't fit into the ridiculous little story this movie wants us to buy. Now, after the narration, films like this usually then show us our protagonist, or protagonists, depending on the film, before the script decides to throw the bullshit at us. Helden is not one of these movies. So the film actually begins at the CERN research facility in Geneva, Switzerland, where a bunch of elementary students are given a tour through the complex. We gotta go through some bullet points because there's just too much stuff that's wrong here. Firstly, nice try convincing me this is an actual tour group. And secondly, I, unlike the writer of this movie, actually did some research and went on the CERN visitor website, and look what I found there. Turns out they don't even let 5-year-olds go on tours. But even if we were to ignore all of those things, I'm pretty fucking certain they don't let 5-year-olds into the installation where they conduct the actual research. We then meet one of the many side characters in this film, Sascha, played by Sebastian Ströbel. He's in a fight with his brother over inheritance when a satellite crashes into their farm, injuring Sascha's brother. We then also meet one of our two protagonists of the film, Sophie, played by Christine Paul, who works at a satellite observation when they receive the news of the crash. After that, we meet our second protagonist, Mark, played by Hannes Jennecke. He's a construction worker who witnesses another satellite crashing into the Reichstag building. Now, in his review of the film, Kreimeier commented on whether it was plausible for Jennecke to climb around on the rubble. But I don't know about you, but the first reaction that I would have, after the initial shock wears off, is to go over there and see what I can do to help. So I'll give Helden the benefit of the doubt here. Back at CERN, Mark gets in contact with his sister Andrea, played by Yvonne Katterfeld, and his daughter Johanna, played by Emilia Schüle, to see if everything is alright. Naturally, it's not, as the Hadron Collider then creates a black hole, which also creates an EMP fallout and a torrential upheaval. But for some reason, only people get sucked into the black hole, not an entire building, as it, actually would happen if anyone gave a damn. So CERN gets trashed, and Johanna and Andrea get buried. We then meet our Deus Ex Machina character Tobias, played by Jannis Niewöhner, who we find out is a hacker and a teen delinquent. Cut to the Bundeskanzleramt, where we're introduced to Chancellor Heiner Lauterbach. Yeah, the Chancellor doesn't even have a name, so we're just gonna call him Chancellor Lauterbach. Also, it's in that scene that we get one of the stupidest pieces of dialogue in the entire movie. Es wird noch weitere Abstürze geben. Erst die Satelliten. Dadurch, Flugzeuge sind ohne Navigation kaum steuerbar. What? Why? Why is it impossible for a halfly decent trained pilot to not fly a plane without GPS? Can someone explain this shit to me, please? So since the epicenter is in CERN, and since Sophie and Mark are ex-wife and husband, he for some reason hitches a ride with her. Why, you may ask? Well, because our Deus Ex Machina character that these two idiots try to get to is the only one that's able to stop this whole thing. That's why he's a Deus Ex Machina character. At the Bundeskanzleramt, we find out that the Swiss army is sending troops to search for survivors, but the people at the Kanzleramt object for some reason. Meanwhile, Mark and Sophie get hit by the EMP explosion and crash near some farm where they find a jeep that works and drive to Tropical Island in Berlin where Tobias is. Now, given that Tropical Island is an attraction, and given that Tobias could literally be anywhere else other than there, I do feel tempted to make an unnecessary product placement remark here. But the movie has other things to do, like get to more characters. The first we meet is Hans, a disgruntled old fart at an old folks' home, played by Jürgen Schornagel. And the second is Willi, leader of a football fan club, Schalke Kumpels, played by Armin Rohde. And why are they relevant to the film? Well, with Hans, we get a subplot about him fixing up an old VHF radio that will be relevant later on in the movie. And with Willi, we get a subplot about their fan club not going so well due to the fact that Schalke 04 hasn't been playing well the past few seasons, which has caused a number of people to leave the fan club. Sophie and Mark find Tobias and take him with them, but he manages to escape. Meanwhile, a bunch of diplomats debate how to stop the black hole from expanding. And what do all of these highly intelligent and well-educated people agree upon? You guessed it, nuke it to Kingdom Come. Mark and Sophie find Tobias on Sasha's farm, who conveniently has not only a plane, but also a license to fly the three to CERN. Now, by this point, you're probably wondering why I haven't commented more on Joanna and Andrea in CERN. Largely because all the scenes of them play out the same way. Johanna bitches around, and Andrea gives her a bitch slap. That's pretty much all that happens. And now, we come to another scene that's in pretty much every disaster movie ever made. The leader of the country delivering his God help us all speech. Sure, the speech is the same as in any other movie like this. Chancellor Lauterbach tells us how the country is fucked and how God may help us all. But what's interesting about this scene aren't the words which Chancellor Heiner Lauterbach utters here. It's in front of what he utters those words. You see, he's giving his speech in front of a rendition of the German Eagle. Now, this is just one rendition of at least 5, and it's totally okay to use it in a scene like this. Someone in production, for some odd reason, felt the need to edit this. However, the way they edited this, you really do have to ask yourself what they were smoking. Move aside, penis hair from the last airbender. German balls eagle just took your place. I swear, this is in the movie. Watch it yourself if you don't believe me. We then cut back to CERN, and the only reason I mention this is because we get to see Yvonne Katterfeld's character die. Even though, and as I've already mentioned, if we were actually accurate with this entire scenario, all of Switzerland would be gone by now. Sasha, together with Mark, Tobias, and Sophie, then manage to crash the plane into Willie's clubhouse, who then gets them to help survivors in a nearby vacant mining building. From then on, it's off to Tobias' house and computer, because only there can they get access into the CERN mainframe. Or something like that. And the rest of the movie is basically just one large race against a nuke that's already been fired. And what do you think? Is everyone going to be okay? Are they going to make it out in time? Do I even need to tell you the answer to that? Okay, I was kind of trolling you here. Yenneke's character actually does die. But apart from that, all the kids make it out. Yippee! People, this movie is bad. I mean, really, really bad. So bad, in fact, I don't even know where to begin. I guess the best place to begin, though, is at the beginning when I said we're going to review Transformers 3. And, in a way, this movie is the German equivalent thereof. Not necessarily in script, but in spirit. Let me just get out my fucking phone here and let me just read you the goddamn cast. Let me again list off this cast here. Christina Paul, Hannes Jennecke, Christine Neubauer, Armin Rohde, Heiner Lauterbach, Yvonne Katterfeld, Sebastian Ströbel, Ingo Naujoks, Jürgen Schornagel. And again, I have to remind you, those are all A-list actors who have given very good performances in the past. I mean, you have the German equivalent of a Coen Brothers cast, and they were used to make this movie. And I didn't even show you some of the really, really stupid shit that's in there. For example, there's a scene where a bunch of people are praying in some gym somewhere, and a bunch of Turkish dudes come in with their imam, played by Adrian Chan, and kindly and politely ask if they can use the space to pray as well, as apparently the building is the only one that's left standing. And what does the priest, played by Tobias Licht, say to that? Nein, das geht jetzt hier. Also suchen Sie sich bitte einen anderen Raum und stören meine Messe nicht weiter. Get it everyone. because Christianity was part of German culture long before any of the Turkish guest workers ever showed up here. Everything in this movie hurts. It hurts so bad. But if it were just that, turns out this film also was a financial disaster as well. You see, part of the funding for this movie came from the Film- and Fernsehfonds Bayern, as well as a few of those of other states, meaning that millions of tax dollars were wasted in making this piece of shit instead of renovating crumbling school buildings or roads. To quote Kreimeier, if RTL thinks it needs to waste 8 million euros, then that's their thing. And lastly, we come to Hans-Jörg Thurn, the guy who directed this piece of shit, who seems to be oblivious to any sort of criticism. To quote Thurn, when asked about his questionable piece of work, "We neither have any pedophilic nor fascist tendencies, nor do we entice violence against minorities, nor hidden any threats of terror between the lines." Okay, but you're not actually gonna address any of the real points of criticism in your movie? This seems to be something that he has in common with Claudio Fragasso, the director of the infamous Troll 2, considered to be one of the worst movies ever made. So, what's there left to say about this movie? I guess the most accurate thing to say at this point would be, this was Das German Critic, and God damn it, movie, you didn't even have the balls to kill a kid.